At Jackson Water, we are in the game and locked in on our goals. Every day, our dedicated teams are hard at work, ensuring that clean, reliable water flows to every home and business in Jackson. We are not just fixing pipes. We're investing in a brighter, more resilient future for our city. Jackson Water. Water for all the time.
Oh, do that for me.
I'll be glad to do that.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kara Shirley. I'm your digital news desk host. Thank you for tuning in to WLBT Plus, continuing our series here where we have interviewed numerous mayoral candidates, Jackson, Flowood, and we are finishing it up today with Butch Lee, who is the incumbent running for a fourth term for mayor of Brandon. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Very nice to meet you.
I'm going to pull this a little closer to you.
Not a problem. Better?
Holler at me if you can. No.
Holler at you if I can. Well, I can holler now.
So, but you are, like we said, going for your fourth term here. For anyone who may be tuning in who is not familiar with you, take a second to introduce yourself.
You're very kind. Very happy to be here with you today. Very good to meet you. I'm one of these guys. I retired from the fire service. Pam and I have 5 children, and we chose Brandon to raise those children in and go to school. And so I had the reason why I got into politics. My neighbor across the street from me, Mr. Gene Sermon, who had been on the board as an alderman for 8 years, decided not to run again and asked me to fill his spot. And I did. And we started off. So that was in 2009. So I was on the board, and I'll never, ever forget, and many people I've shared this story with. I got the first audit, went home and told Pam, we're leaving Brandon. It was not a good story at that time. And shared that over the course of the next 12, 14 months with a father figure I had, Mr. David R. Williams. And I can still remember exactly where we were standing at church when he looked at me and said, well, Butch, if it bothers you that much, you need to do something about it. And that just put a conviction on my heart. Didn't sleep for a few days and decided to put all my energies into coming out of retirement and putting all of my energy into making life better in Brandon. Mm-hmm. So started off, that was in 2013. And it was kind of the community knew it was in a sad state in the fiscal side, the spending side, the money side, the financial side was in such a bad state of repair at that time. And we got to remember, we were coming out of 2008, when the economy collapsed and that kind of stuff. So there were a lot of reasons for that. But it reached a point for our last city clerk. She shared with me, she said there was a point in time when I had to call the board to say, you better get down here. We can't make payroll. Now, when you're a company and you can't make payroll to 175 employees, something is terribly wrong. And that's exactly the way it was. So we struggled through that. And the first time I ran, nobody else ran against me. And it was just, it was kind of taboo because nobody else wanted to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
So you fast forward and you get the book straight and things begin to flower and blossom a little bit in that second term. Then we were able to begin to do things like save our downtown, improve our water system, improve public safety, improve parks and those kind of things. And then that manifested itself into the third term. We were able to take big steps. And that's more or less where the point of Brandon is at right now. So the foundation has been laid for a wonderful community. It really is a wonderful community. I've got people that I'm meeting every day that are moving to Brandon from out of state, from in the state, I met a lady this morning, moved up here from the coast. I met you, of course, you moved to Pisgah, where some of my family goes back to out there. And I like to say that Brandon being the county seat, as the county seat comes up, the whole county comes up. So a rising tide raises all ships. So I began my political journey saying what's good for Brandon is good for Pearl. What's good for Pearl is good for Richland. What's good for Richland is good for Flowood. What's good for Flowood is good for Brandon. What's good for Brandon, what's good for Florence and Puckett and Pelahatchie. Those are the municipalities in Rankin County. And I like to believe that's happened because the population in Rankin County is exploding, both inside our city and outside. When I began, we were the 21st largest city in the state. I don't remember what that population number was, but I believe it was about 15,000. Now we are the either 15th or 14th largest city in the state of Mississippi. We have grown that fast.
Wow.
So in that growth comes great opportunity to get it right, but you're dealing with stuff. We're all, we get to 2031, we'll be 200 years old. So we got a lot of old stuff in our little downtown area, and we make, and everywhere else. I've told the last three mayors of the city of Jackson, Brandon's problems are no different than yours, except it's just a matter of scale, So we went to work fixing our stuff, our infrastructure and streets and things like that. So it's been a wonderful journey. It's things like in the last 8 years, I've been 932 homes built inside the city of Brandon, not counting all those multitudes going just outside the city.
Yeah.
People are moving here and enjoying a safe, high quality place to live, work, and raise a family. So I'm kind of babbling, but is that what you're looking for me here today for? I can keep going.
You can. We've got all the time in the world. No, but you say that there was a lot of time to get a lot of things right. And you're going for your fourth term here. And we're going to talk about a lot of the things that have gone right, but can you pinpoint or speak to anything that you think would we classify as maybe didn't go right?
No, there've been so many hurdles to get over. I can tell you as a mayor, and it's not like I'm going for a fourth term. It's just I see the foundation has been laid. Any mayor and a mayor council form of government, you learn on the front end, the mayor really has an opinion and a voice box, but you can't do anything. You don't spend any money. You don't hire. You don't fire. You have no authority to do all that. That power rests with the board. Okay. Makes sense. So I've got a great board. So as I interact with mayors all over the state of Mississippi, I tell them what a great board I've got to work with. It's so great this election cycle, only one has an opponent. So I've got 6 board members without opponents. So that tells me that the community is pretty much settled on the direction and what's being done in Brandon. They all see it. They all see the progress. And I can go down a litany of things from water to highways, to streets, to public safety. You just tell me where you want to go and I'll start going. I almost created something like an alphabet for you to ask me questions for. Yeah. So you could start at A, B, C, D, E, and I've got things I could talk about all the way down to W and water. You just tell me a letter and I'll start running with it. How about that?
Oh, well, sounds good. It sounds good. Z
is going to be
X.
X is the X-ray vision to see over the horizon. When we started, and when I say we, it's some of the board members that are still with us, and we wrestle with what tomorrow was going to be. In other words, what does Brandon want to be? We knew we were approaching a 200-year-old community, great community. Give you an example. The first railroad going east-west in the state of Mississippi went from Vicksburg to Brandon, turned around and went back. just stuff like that, you know. So we
Yeah.
got enough history there to preserve, but we struggle with what is Brandon going to be. So we landed in a quality place to live, work, and raise a family. Well, with that comes quality homes. We need more restaurants. We need more streets paved. We need more water. We need. So the needs began to figure out, okay, how do we take all that and parlay that into something bigger? And we began with youth sports. So we began to invest in baseball fields, soccer fields, those kind of things, because that's what parents with small children, you know, if you don't find your kids, like show choir, that
Like
yours
show
is
choir.
involved in, if you
Very
don't
much.
find something for those children to get involved with, you know, they're going to find something on their own to get involved with. So we want to be a community that's got a multitude of things going on. There's opportunity everywhere. So we've got great band at the high school. We've got great athletic program. We've got great academics going on in Brandon. You know, I've got a mayor's youth council, and I remember I was talking to a gentleman just a few weeks ago. I remember his son was on that. And I think at one point in time, I had either 5 or 6 students on the mayor's youth council that made 35 or 36 on the ACT.
Wow.
You know, so we've got the academics going on. We got great scholarships going on, just opportunity everywhere. And that's what we want the whole city to be. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay. So come get you a part of it. You know, we're selling houses every day. Just come on to Brandon.
Well, I'm a Brandon resident. Well, that's at least what I have to put on envelopes.
Negative. So the going joke is kind of funny is it's 042 and 047, so to speak. I spend an inordinate amount of time. Gary Rose used to laugh at me about this. If you lived in an unincorporated area, I'll choose a reservoir. It went from above Pisgah up all the way down into Smith County at that point in time. When zip codes first came out, you got a Brandon mailing address and a 39042 zip code. Well, as the population of the reservoir began to raise up, you had to carve that out. So 39047, but you still got a Brandon mailing address.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So a sizable part of Flowood has a Brandon mailing address, but it's not in the city of Brandon. Nobody in Smith County is in the city of Brandon. Puckett is not in the city of Brandon. So it's a little confusing to people sometimes like that. So just because you got a Brandon mailing address does not mean you live in the city of Brandon.
I've been told that I live in it's either fake Brandon.
No.
Someone's jokingly said that to me.
Yeah, well, as long you just kick them in the shin if they say that in a derogatory way.
Okay. All right. And I will tell them that Butch Lee told me I had permission to do this. So
kick them in the shin. That's right. Yeah,
okay.
No.
Well, as you're out and you're talking to constituents and getting a read on their concerns, what are you hearing as some of the main concerns from your residents out there?
I would guess the number one concern is keep going, don't stop. They like everything they see. Tremendous amount of positives going on, and I could go through a litany of those positives. But they want to continue. They don't want to slow. They don't want to stop. You do have an element of any community that wants it to keep the way it was, you know, and I'm afraid at this point in time that there are a lot of people in Brandon that kind of outnumber the people that want to keep it like a small town atmosphere. So where I was coming from earlier when I said trying to figure out what Brandon's going to be going forward in the future, we had a generation before us that they would raise their kids there. We've got great churches. Just really it's a wonderful place to live, work, and raise family. Those kids would grow up, finish high school, and they'd leave and go to college, and they wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
You know, and so you had a couple of decades of that. So it wasn't like you were pushing people away. It's just nothing there to keep people. I'll tell you a story from Noel Daniels, a friend of mine. Ergon would hire an engineer and young couple kind of deal, and they would move here and they'd stay here in this area, you know, central Mississippi. I wouldn't just say just Brandon. Stay a couple of years and then decide to leave, and they never could figure out why. And the Lambton family and Noel told me there's nothing here for young people. You know, there's no reason to come back here. So we need more jobs. Working on that. Working on big opportunities that some I can speak to, some I can't right now. Some will be revealed in the month of April, I believe. And it'll be some of those wow moments. But that was the heart of Brandon. So people don't want it to stop, whether it's downtown. 6 years ago, we didn't have a restaurant in downtown Brandon. Give an example. Got a nice little downtown. I can remember visiting with Mayor Mary Hawkins Butler, a friend of mine. And I remember she and I had lunch. She said, I think I'd start the multitude. Where are you going to start fixing all this? I think I'd start with downtown. Well, that stuck with me. My problem, or our problem in Brandon, was we had a multitude of places that we need to start on.
Yeah.
Police, fire, dispatch, streets, water, everything needed a start. But I'll never forget that. So in the last 6 years, now we have 6 restaurants downtown. I can tell you what the next restaurant's going to be. I can tell you what the next business is going to be in downtown. I can tell you what the next restaurant's going to be in that $50 million project going on by City Hall. These things are happening faster than you can shake stick at, but we've built the base. We've built the foundation to support all that. So it's a wonderful journey. So it's kind of one of these stories of you get it all fixed. You get the finances fixed. You get the personnel fixed. And then all of a sudden it looks easy. It ain't easy. It's 24/7. I would invite you to, we get through this, you might want to invite my wife over here and have a little one-on-one conversation with her. I think that might be both entertaining for you and your viewers, because she and Jesus really are the only two that could begin to understand how much of myself I've put into this. Now, that sounds a little selfish. I want to be careful when I say that, but I had a personal experience on March the 13th of 2005, which changed the course of my life. So shoved me into retirement, but at the same time, it prepared me for sitting here with you right now. So those things are purposeful. They're intentional. Now, I spent a lot of time talking about MDOT and DEQ and Department of Finance Administration and our state government and all this kind of stuff, because we are the central hub of Rankin County. But it does things that you see from afar, or if you come to Brandon and you eat at night, you eat at Cleaner's Pizza and that kind of stuff. They're intentional. They're not happenstance. They're not coincidental. They're just not happening a flutter in the air. The things that are happening inside Brandon are the good things, and they're intentional in a choreographed step-by-step process.
Well, then you said you could tell us the next restaurant that's coming, next shop. What are those?
No.
Come on, you just said you could tell us.
No. You come back. We'll have that ribbon cutting and that groundbreaking. It's not, it's not the place of government to state those things. The place of government is to create an environment that is open to investment, because it's private investment from the private sector that brings those types of things. So it's our job to create the place that they want to come to. Hence the purpose of youth sports, hence the purpose of downtown, hence the purpose of the amphitheater, hence the purpose of improved public safety. All of those things gel together, create an environment that people say, hey, I want to be there. So that's the Sullivan story. Sullivan's Marketplace is coming to Brandon. It's a $30 million investment. I can say that because they're pushing dirt. They tell me they're going to have that building up in 10 months. And I started laughing at them. I said, you're going to have to prove it. I'm sorry. I'll give you 12 months, but I'm just not going to believe you can get it up in 10 months. But their intent, they've been doing that for 40 years. For them to make a $30 million investment in Brandon out there by Home Depot speaks to two brothers that want to be in Brandon. They recognize what's going on.
And Sullivan's, that's a grocery store, correct?
Correct. That's right.
Are there any other plans for other grocery stores to be coming in?
We make overtures, but I'm not going to tell you who. I can tell you who I'd like it. See, you fall into this trap sometimes of what I like and what I don't like.
Yeah. That's
not the role of a mayor. The role of a mayor is to build an environment that others want to be in. So, yeah.
Well, let's talk. You mentioned the Heights at Brandon earlier, and it was announced in 2023, broke ground in 2024. When do you anticipate that being completed? Initially, you said should be completed around 2025. Is that still?
No, one of the things that many people in the public don't grasp, and sometimes we don't either. You don't know what the hurdles are to get there. So when that was announced, it sounded like it was a slam dunk, that we would have the county coming along beside us, that we would have energy coming along beside us, that we would have all these things lined up. And you know what? It really just doesn't work that way. So somebody has to take the bull by the horns and get over all these hurdles. It's very complicated. You got to get through DEQ. You got to get through stormwater. You got to get, it's just on and on and on. Phase 1 assessment for environmental, a phase 2 assessment for environmental, and make sure you're putting in water lines appropriately. So it takes, and then on the private sector, you know, it's not all the public side working about that. The private sector, he's got to go out and find his financing for it too. So you're coming out of an era of COVID 2020. Our financial landscape for the last 4 years has not been dismal, but it hadn't been good either. Well, now you fast forward into a new presidential cycle, and it's kind of like all of a sudden the markets are wide open. They're looking for things. So it's different. So same with the other hotel that we've got going up, the one down by Applebee's on Stribling Lane. That's a Honda Suites place. We had to, you know, get into TIF bonds and work on stormwater. These things are very complicated. So we work on them every day. So it took a little bit longer on that one to get that done for them to get to moving dirt. And they are anxious to be up. I wish they were built right now. Same company, Thrash Construction out of Hattiesburg, good group, Ike and Joe Thrash, father, son. They built Hotel Tupelo for anybody that's listening that might have stayed in Tupelo. And that's the type of facility they build. They've got properties in, I think they've got 3 in Colorado. And one of the things that brought them to Brandon was they built a hotel in Golden, Colorado that was close to Red Rock. Well, Red Rock is that amphitheater, that natural amphitheater out there. So that was a natural draw for them to get close to an amphitheater because they understood what it did to their business model in Colorado. But they do typically 3 construction projects at a time. They just finished Baton Rouge. They just finished Pensacola. They've got properties in St. Louis, Lexington, Kentucky, Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know where all they got properties. They've done, you know, so they've done a lot of work. So very glad to have them in Brandon making that investment.
When you bring up an amphitheater, now let's talk about the Brandon Amphitheater.
Okay.
What does the future of the Brandon Amphitheater look like?
It's beyond a slam dunk. And I can tell you, who would have ever thought that, I remember for me personally, it was about 3 years ago, Santana was there on one night, you know, number 3 guitarist in the world. And, you know, when I'm out there, I'm working. I get questions all the time. Did they play this song? Did they play that song? I couldn't tell you what song they played than A Man in the Moon because I'm watching and taking care of things that need to get taken care of. But it's been wonderful. The things that you see of Sullivan's and rooftops and businesses and restaurants in downtown, all of that, that's part of that economic development that's coming from that. Now, I didn't learn that from a book. We, board members and I, we took, Chris Vinson's one of them. We took a road trip. Jamie Ware's another. He's not a board member, but an architect. We did a roundabout, a drive around, went through Snowden Grove Park in South Haven, and went up through Campbellsville, Kentucky, and all the way up into, Illinois, and back down through Georgia and back to here, looking at youth sports facilities and things like that. That was my first exposure to really thinking about what an amphitheater was. Well, I can remember walking around in Snowden Grove going, not in Brandon. I cannot be an advocate for that because it was nothing really than a little stage house and a earthen mound, porta johns and beer tents. I said, Brandon, no, I ain't gonna happen in Brandon. From my perspective, being selfish there. Of course, the board could have overrode me anytime they wanted to. But so I said, no. Well, somebody with Live Nation figured out that we were kind of thinking in those terms here in Central Mississippi. And they reached out to us and we went over and visited with Walt Maddox, who's the mayor of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And you would think, well, sure, an amphitheater is going to work over here because you got the University of Alabama right here beside it. Found out real quick. University helps a little bit, but not really. That's not what makes that thing run. So on the Warrior River, you can get on Google Earth and go back in time and look. It was, I think, 2 or 3 little baseball fields, but the Warrior River was a slough or a bayou there, and they filled it in with all the trash from Tuscaloosa and built up a base, and they built an amphitheater there. Now, Walt, the mayor, shared with me that they were just trying to reinvigorate downtown, find some way to bring downtown back, Tuscaloosa. And they had looked at everything, you could imagine, all the way down to convention centers. And they actually had the Swedes come in, some financial partners come in, try to figure out, can we make a convention center work in downtown Tuscaloosa?
Mm-hmm.
That answer was no, nothing. So anybody that you see does convention center, they're not an economic driver. And they wound up going to Georgia and looking at an amphitheater and said, that's something we can build. So they came back and built that. This was maybe 12 years into it that we were standing there with them. And that set us on a course to study and look. So then we looked at the wharf, we looked at some other things, and we began to study amphitheaters and being strategically placed between I-55 north and south and I-20 east and west. We're even in a ripe location, especially when we had a site that was right on the interstate.
Mm-hmm.
So we began to study that even more. And there you go. So we put it out for bids, that and 6 ball fields at Quarry Park. And those bids came in at $28 million right out the gate. No way, Jose, can't happen. So we actually pushed it down the road for about 14, 16 months. And we, meaning myself and 3 other people in Public Works, very fortunate to hire a longtime friend of mine, Mr. Ole Smith, who has taught me everything I think I need to know about a track hoe. Spent a lot of hours in a track hoe. So we did all what's called a pre-con work. So the pre-con work is the work that's done getting the site ready for construction.
Mm-hmm.
Then we turned back around and put it out for bids, and it came in at $20 million. We could afford that. We fund that with a 2% food and beverage tax. It's dedicated to the debt service of the amphitheater. We don't have to worry about it. As long as that thing, I can speak for the board when I say this, as long as it's taking care of itself, rock on. We don't have, it's not pulling away from streets, police, fire, and anything else the city's doing. It stands on its own. It has always stood on its own. It always comes out every year, 200,000 to 700,000. Usually it's about 500,000 to the good. It comes out, and we take that money and put back into it to make other improvements in the facility. Does that help?
It does help.
100th show coming up. You'll like when Treaty Oak comes in May. It will be the 100th show in there. We've had about 500,000 people come through that. And that's not counting the other things we use it for. We use it for 5Ks. We use it for gumbo cook-offs. We use it for the Magical Light Show driving through. We had 28,000 vehicles come through that last year. 28,000 vehicles come through the Magical Light Show.
I was one of those.
Well, you need to buy 2 tickets. You know, I tell all the grandparents, 1 ticket, you're messing up. You may need to get that early discount and get 2 or 3 because that grandchild's going to want to come back through, because when they're looking out this window to the right, they're not going to see all that stuff on the left.
Right.
So it's been a wonderful experience. Again, raise a family, quality of life things to do and experience, like show choir.
Like show choir, which unfortunately they were supposed to be at the Brandon Amphitheater this weekend, but Mother Nature had other plans.
You just don't want to risk it with that many people. And they had people coming from Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, you know.
Yeah.
You just tell them all, if you know anybody that's in show choir, that you'll be right back there next year. That'll be one of the first things we put on the calendar.
I will make sure to let them all know this. Well, as you get in these economic developments, these new businesses, new hotels, more shows at the amphitheater, that can be a breeding ground for more crime. So how are you ensuring that the crime levels don't raise?
We began 2 years ago. I'll use these same words that I used with the board 2 years ago. We need to have budget cycles where we invest in personnel. That's what it needs to happen. When we began, the only way we could write the books, we were at 173, 174 employees. We let 32 employees go to reduce it. We eliminated all but 2 in Parks and Rec and more than half of Public Works at that time. Now, Public Works has come back, but we never hurt police and fire or dispatch. Never going to do that. In fact, we're going to add to it. So the big thing that we've done beginning 2 years ago was figuring out how to increase our pay. So coming from that world as an ex-firefighter, I can tell you that many people that you see all over the place, and they still do it today, there's nothing wrong with it. You're working a shift to begin with. So for years, you would have the security of insurance, retirement, and a steady job over here on this side. And if you had any wherewithals about you on the other side, you get out there and do something in the private sector, start your own business, paint, cut grass, mechanic work, you name it. You can do that. So you mesh those two together, and all of a sudden you've got a good standard of living. It's happened all over this state, happened all over this country, so it's nothing new. However, society changes, and I'm recognizing the changes in society because we've seen so many people come and go. And I got to be honest with you, shift work is tough on especially young married couples with children. Shift work is a tough thing. So we began to look at this in a way, the board and I, to where we had to get our first responders to a living wage where you don't have to work that second job.
Yeah.
Unless you absolutely have. It's okay to continue doing that, but you don't have to do it.
Right.
So you could be an 18-year-old right now, police or fire, go to work. Your starting salary annually would be $52,500 plus all the benefits. But you add all that up, it's probably a $75,000 or $80,000 position. And then we'll send you to training. So in 4 years, just keep your nose clean, do your job. That's a standard line I use an awful lot. Do your job, go home. Don't take your job home with you.
Yeah.
Come back tomorrow, do your job. Do your job, do your job. Don't mess up. Just be good. Just be a good employee. It's all you're asking of people. And in 4 years, you'll be at $65,000, $66,000 a year. We also instituted benchmarks, meaning if you've got an AA, AS, or a BS degree, that kind of means you can read and write and create a paragraph or handle a talk radio show, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or talk TV.
You got a degree? Talk TV?
Yeah.
Okay. So journalism, you had some training and education had to go with that. So that's worth something. So that's an annual for a BA or a BS. That's an extra $1,000 that goes into for the rest of your time as you work with the city of Brandon. We instituted higher things for certifications like paramedics. That's another $1,000, So we're trying to create a higher educated workforce and those that want to stay with us by creating what I call a living wage. So there you go. That's how we're helping that. Okay?
Well, let's talk about traffic in downtown Brandon.
You gotta love MDOT. I'll just tell you, you gotta love MDOT.
How are you? What are your plans to spur improvement to kind of try to push that along?
Well, I was glad to see at the state level this year that the governor signed that income tax, which I've been against that. My family and I have been against that since the dawn of time. Great Aunt Mary, first woman to run for governor of the state of Mississippi, was adamantly opposed to an income tax. And so was my father, who was in a little bit of politics, that kind of stuff. So it's a very regressive thing when you're taxing their work. And that's basically what you're doing. So I'm very glad we're there. Within this package was funding, and it's going to be sales tax. There's the only negative thing about this. It's going into the gas tax. So you'll be getting gas tax, but fuels more money into MDOT. Very pleased with that. And so we need help on our highways. We need better maintenance. In Brandon, I'm telling you, you just figure all those homes, figure 1,000 homes, it's just on average. Just say it's 2 extra vehicles. Usually it's 3 or 4 by the time you have a couple of teenagers. Just do the math on the number of vehicles running the road and streets. So I have made pleadings annually to the legislature and get really nowhere. But I'm not going to stop. And they know I'm not going to stop. I'm going to be sitting there looking at them in the eyes and telling them about the wrecks that happened, the fatalities that happened. We had a horrible fatality on Highway 18 where we want a signal. We even figured out a way to pay for that ourselves. And MDOT said no. Wow. So it's their ground. So we need, we've got some very specific needs. We've got, if you're going into downtown Brandon, if you look on Highway 80, you got 2 lanes going up the hill, 1 lane coming down. What makes sense about that? Makes no sense, right? You got a turn lane in the middle. So from downtown Brandon, we need another lane added to get to the interstate. We need to rebuild again the downtown interstate exchange, exit 56. At exit 54, work with Gary Rhodes and Jake Wyndham and Pearl and the airport. The 4 of us finished at entities. We got East Metro open. So now you've got a 4-lane roadway from exit 54 all the way up across Spillway Road to get to I-55 North, if that's where you want to go, or to Pisgah. So you can get there a little bit quicker.
Yeah. But
now we just need to continue that 4-lane road south of I-20 with a bridge over the railroad tracks and continuing down Brandon. That idea was first birthed by the Rankin County supervisors in 1993. They had enough money to build 2 lanes of road to get to the interstate, and that's where it stopped. So I'm very appreciative of our Rankin County supervisors because they've picked up the mantle again, and now we're talking about a bridge over the railroad tracks and 4-laning what's now called the Brandon Loop that will go all the way around to Highway 471 in the north, and ultimately will be a 4-lane pathway all the way around Brandon. I get people that say, well, that's just going to kill Brandon. No, it's not going to kill Brandon. It's just going to be that much more in Brandon. So we're growing, and I understand the traffic because I'm in it every day.
Yeah.
My family's in it every day, and I hear it from my wife. So I hear it.
Well, if you don't listen to the wife,
yeah. And she's a redhead, by the way, if she happens to be listening. So you especially listen to redheaded wives.
You do, actually. That's very true. Very, very true. Well, let's talk about taxes in Brandon. Okay. What was the situation, I guess, when you came into office? Is it better? How has it gotten better? And how do you plan to continue that improvement and make it even better?
The 2 things that had to happen in 2013 after that election cycle. In fact, we had 3 elections, 1, 2, 3 that year. The first election was in May for who was going to be on the board. The second election, we had 2 more referendums immediately behind that. The first one was in June, and that was a referendum to do liquor by the glass because Brandon was dry at that time. And then the third one was to get out there and begin to figure out how we're going to pay for that amphitheater, and that was 2% food and beverage tax to put more into parks. So we did a little bit of sales tax, and we increased millage by 6 mills at that time. Very distasteful to do that because that's property tax. The issue that people get hung up on, and I've done educational moments on this all the time, is millage is not taxation. It's 1/1000th of the value of a property. So when you compare a city like 10,000 population of Flowood and almost a 30,000 population of Brandon, 28,000 something, the millage is so far, the value of the mill is so extreme in the other way, you don't have to have high millage in Flowood because the property values of those 4 corners of Dogwood are so high. A mill over there is twice as big as what a mill is in Brandon. It's difficult to grasp that. Got to get out here on a whiteboard and show you all that. So that was something done, and that was the only way we could get out of that. I mean, we had employees, this sounds bizarre, but employees hadn't had a raise in almost 8 years that we had left. It's the only way we could get a raise to our employees to hang on to them. So that's still in place, still going forward. And now we fall into this, our sales tax. That's the only other venue, back to public safety, since I'm a public safety guy. This is a test question. Now I get to ask some questions here too, don't I?
Go ahead.
What do you think we've paid our police and fire in the last 10 years in dollars? You got any, just big picture?
Well, if right now the starting pay you said was 52.
Well, I'm talking about the last 10 years now. Lump sum, what's in the budget?
I can't answer that question because
75 million. I tell people that, and they faint and fall out. That's a testimony to the importance that we place on public safety in Brandon. Take you back to 10 years ago this February, we had an anniversary. We became the first municipality in the state of Mississippi to create an EMS district. And the reason why we did that is because we had such poor ambulance service over there. We had a basketball player, broke his leg on a basketball court. It took 55 minutes to get an ambulance there to transport him. We had a heart attack in Eastgate, and our paramedics stayed there with him, but it was an hour and 20 minutes later to get an ambulance to transport a heart attack to the hospital. Story after story after story after story. So we had to do something. So I had 2 great fire chiefs, Rob Martin and Terry, and they came up with the idea of we need to explore going to Mississippi State Department of Health and creating our own EMS. Never been done before. We did that in Brandon. Now our average response time, and we test this every month, is about 8 minutes and 32 seconds to get an ambulance to where it needs to be inside the city of Brandon. Police is about 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Fire is about 4 minutes and 7 seconds. So we drastically improved our response times with the investments that we've made in people.
How many police officers are on the police force right now?
There are around 40 police, 40 fire, and I think we're short 2 people right now in police, and I think we're short 4, but we kind of froze 4 positions in the fire department to help fund those in police, because we knew until this budget cycle gets settled a little more and we understand clearly what's happening with, there are no crazy things happening with sales tax or people coming to ball games or people coming to amphitheaters for shows and that kind of stuff. That'll sustain our sales tax. So it's a process of using ad valorem or property tax and sales tax to complement that, to do the things a growing city needs to do.
Mm-hmm. And when you speak about public works, there's not a public works director right now.
Right.
Is there plans to get a director?
Yes. We have somewhat of a 3-legged stool in public works. We got a great guy, Holland Silcox, is over water and sewer. So he handles that. And he's got his work crews. Got another gentleman, Mr. Ole Smith, that's got streets and stormwater and construction, and he's handling those. And we have Carly Dearman in the office, and she's over water administration. So between those 3, they function together as a public works director. Mm-hmm. I'm happy with that. But you know, when we let the last one go last summer, and just like an events coordinator is another position that we need right now. Been hesitant going into an election cycle. I can't go out and recruit people to come here. It's just like his radio station. Nobody's going out and recruit you, and you don't know who's going to be around the next 4 years.
Yeah.
So a little bit sensitive there. So it's a timing thing. And yes, I have a cadre of people lined up that I need to talk to when we get through this election cycle, and we can begin to fill those.
Well, I mean, we've talked about so much. You've answered so many questions. You asked some questions as well. But let's say if there's someone out there that's watching right now and
Sure.
They are kind of on the fence right now still. They're not sure of who they're going to be voting for on Tuesday. Okay. Tell them why they should vote for Butch Lee.
Early on, first term was get the financial house and open, because it all starts with, you would think it starts with public safety, but it starts with, if you can't pay people, if you can't pay your bills, pay your debt, and pay your employees, you're dead in the water. That's the story of Brandon for almost a decade in there. I've got graphs here that would show you, day one, we were $800,000 in the red in a general fund. We owed the enterprise fund $2.5 million. The state Department of Revenue came in, knocking on the door. You owe us $1.5 million. They had coded in the Kroger on Spillway Road as a city of Brandon. Same mistake you made about living in Brandon. And they wanted their back sales tax. Like, you got $1 million in the checking account you can write for a check. Yeah. And you owed $500 to the sanitation department. So you owed all this debt that doesn't even show up in the ledger. By the way, I've got all those. I got from 1999 all the way up to 2013, and all of our audits from 2014 are on the state auditor's website. Anybody can go get them, make copy, give you or anybody else whatever they want. So the difference then at first term was get the money right, get your financial house in order. Second was to begin, okay, what are we going to do in youth sports? What improvements can we do at Shiloh Park? Wonderful park. And that was one of those moments of, we spent probably close to almost $4 million out there improving half of the park, tore down every concession stand except 2, and rebuilt them all. And began to host big tournaments and that kind of stuff. But that began to fuel more sales tax dollars from outside the city coming to inside the city. So that worked well. Then the amphitheater came online, and the same thing began to happen. So it's a proponent of more. So financial house in order, then figure out how we can do more with water, streets, public works, police, fire, dispatch. And that's where we are now. So we've taken all of that groundwork has been done. Now it's, what do you see over the horizon? You see, back then we couldn't even see 6 months from now. How are we going to make it 6 months? More or less, how are you going to make it 6 years? Today, I can sit here and look at you and anybody that's listening to us, and I can say, I can see over the horizon. I can see what's coming that's about to be announced. and it's going to be jaw dropping. And it's because of the work that the board and I, that we work for, and our department heads, it's all that body of work to get us to this point. So you're going to be very pleased, and Brandon is going to be in a very good situation going forward. So then it becomes a process of managing all that is coming, you know, and being, when you got to be hard and say no, you got to be hard and say no. When you say yes, when you say, I don't know, then you begin to defer to the wisdom of the board to give me some direction here on the board. How do you want this to play out? So got a great relationship, great city, great board, and great people. And my role is just to continue those great works.
And so if someone wants to get in touch with you, I don't know if you're doing any last minute campaigning.
Well,
if they want to volunteer, how can they get in touch with you?
Doing a lot of door to door. My personal cell number, which is area code 601-906-9169. I find very few people in Brandon that don't have that, but I'm happy to give it to them. So that's not a government phone. That's my personal phone. Mm-hmm. My email address at my desk at the office is blee@brandonms.org. And I stay up to date on my emails and correspondence as fast as I can. I do miss some phone calls that come into a couple other places like info@Brandon MS, or might come into the Rankin County Chamber. It may take me a little while to get to them, but I try to call everybody back, whether I like it or not, whether it's me getting a chewing about something, a barking dog, garbage hadn't been picked up, all that kind of stuff. That's the life of a mayor sometimes. So you understand what it is before you step into it. And it's pleasant and yet unpleasant. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's not for the weak. You've got to have some consternation about you to do this. So I'm going to leave, I don't know if you're getting ready to close this down. I don't know if you're going to take any calls or what, but I'm going to leave you with a quote from Nick Saban, okay, which I graduated from Southern Miss, so I'm black and gold down here. I know we got a lot of state and Ole Miss people, but so Nick Saban has a saying, and I've used it quite frequently of late. And it goes something like this. If you want to be liked by everybody, don't be a leader, sell ice cream.
That's a good statement.
If you're going to be a good leader, you think about it, pray about it, make a decision, pray some more, think about it, work, and you go. You don't wait. You make decisions for the best of the community, for the best of everybody involved, and you move.
Mm-hmm. And if you are hearing this and you are prepared to move, make sure you're moving on April the 1st.
Thank you. Yeah. Vote for Butch Lee at that's another interesting thing. Thank you for that. But I keep filling in with these tidbits. So in 2013, that spring, we asked the question. I had a deputy city clerk at that time say, it's confusing to everybody because every census that comes along, do you know where you vote, by the way?
I do.
All right. Mm-hmm. When the census comes along, next census in 2030, that may change.
Didn't know that.
See? So in a city, a lot of times those ward lines change, and we had to go through that because we're growing so fast. For a static city, it's not a problem. Churches want to get involved and use this as a polling place. I can remember going into our leadership church and say, okay, folks, you're going to do this at our church. I'm just going to tell you, there's going to be a point in time when there's going to have to be a special election and you got something scheduled for the church. Something's not going to give. And that happened. We had to cancel and postpone Vacation Bible School one time. But so that being said, we've got all these multitude of places that you can vote. We consolidated that. We had David Wade, who works at Central Mississippi Planning and Development District, worked with Mark Baker, our board attorney, and we reached out to the Justice Department, U.S. Justice Department. And we said, we want to consolidate all of our polling places for city elections. Anybody listening out there, city elections, they're all at City Hall. You don't have to go looking for where you're going to vote. It's all under one roof. You walk into what we call a big room, and Ward 1's over here, Ward 2's over here, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you go to one location to vote for all city elections.
And that is City Hall.
That is City Hall on Highway 80, 1000 Municipal Drive.
1000 Municipal Drive, April the 1st is where you can go to vote for Brandon. Obviously, Flowood, you're going to go to Flowood. And I would be lying if I told people where to go for Jackson, but the information is on our website.
Well, yeah, but they're still broken out by wards and in different places.
It's just it's a lot of places. It's a lot. It's a lot out there.
Mhm.
But Butch, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me, spending some time with me. I appreciate it.
You gotta be so. This hour and a half is up already. You ready to kick me out the door?
Yeah, I'm fixing to kick you out. I got to eat lunch, man.
Lunch?
Yeah.
Oh no! When you're having this good a time, here's a bottle of water.
There's a bottle of water.
Thank
No,
you.
I
Thank
do
you.
appreciate you coming on. And again, April 1st, next Tuesday, is the primary election. And really, because there's only you and Fred Shanks running for the mayor of Brandon. Once the primary happens, you'll know who the next mayor will be, right?
Back to business.
Back to business. Back to business. Well, if you want to vote for either one of the candidates, April 1st at City Hall in Brandon, we will be back on Monday at 1 o'clock for a more WLBT Plus. And then at 2:30 today, our First Alert weather team will be here to give you a in-depth look at the forecast and let you know the timing out of the rain. We are expecting some severe storms on Sunday, but you want to get that full detail of the real information from our meteorologist, and that's going to be again at 2:30 today. So make sure you're here. Butch, thank you for joining me on this Friday.
Such nice meeting you.
Nice to meet
And
you
you need to
too.
remember now, we're selling houses every day in Brandon.
I'll keep that in mind. I will keep it in mind.
Mhm.
You all have a great day, and I will see you on Monday. Bye-bye.